This is your backstage pass for current trends, politics, and education in the dental world. It is live. You know, it's not even over a cocktail yet. I don't know what's happening to me in my old age. I'm still working on a cup of coffee, which is kind of stupid because I have a 6 a.m. flight tomorrow morning, which I'm not looking forward to. But anyway, we have a great night in front of you. Tonight, a very dear friend. We've been good buddies from out at the Coy Center for a while. This gentleman has taught me so much about salivary diagnostics and the oral systemic connection. You're going to hear all about that tonight. Dr. Doug Thompson is on the show with us. But before that, we've got all your favorites. We've got JB with the news, and we've got Chad with, well, I guess whatever Chad does. We never know from night to night where Chad's going to go, but who knows? Let's see what happens tonight. Let's bring on Chad and JB. As you all know, we are dentists, we are business owners, and we are all educators. And together we have one little job, and that is to bring all of you in the know. So welcome. Good to see you, my friends. What's happening?
Oh, same
the
old.
excitement is just overwhelming.
Yeah.
I'm just blown away by your enthusiasm. Should we start over?
Let's do that again. Can we get another soft landing?
Welcome to Humpday Happy Hour.
Hey, everybody.
Some enthusiasm, please.
All right, let's try this again.
All you beautiful people.
How's it going?
It's good, I think. Hey, we're getting a ton of rain. Jeff, have you gotten a ton of rain lately?
We're not. We're gonna. It looks like there's a bunch coming. That's why I'm on a 6 a.m. flight tomorrow, trying to make it to Oklahoma before this storm gets in here.
Are you speaking in Oklahoma?
Oklahoma City, not far from Norman, my friend.
That's what I was thinking, because I noticed that we were hosting, but I didn't really pay attention to who was speaking, and I heard through the grapevine that you were going to be able to get out in the morning. So
yeah, well, I was I actually made a great backup plan. So because I really thought at first they were talking about this storm coming through Thursday, like early morning to midday, and I'm like, there is no way I'm going to get out of here, because it's supposed to go right over Atlanta, which everything I do has to happen through Atlanta. Sometimes Detroit, but not this time. Couldn't get to Oklahoma City through Detroit. So I thought, you know what? I've got to come up with some contingency plan. You know who is going to step in for me, and I got to give him a shout out?
Who's that?
Troy Schmeding.
Good for the Schmedster.
Oh,
yeah. He was going to actually step in for me, and he's like, you know, we have a lot of...
I got you.
Yeah,
I know that's what he said.
Don't you love people like that? I mean, I know I can call you, but here's the thing is that you guys, we're all doing a lot of these lectures for 8 already. So they've had us in a lot of these locations. They've heard all of our shtick. So when one of us gets to go somewhere new, they kind of need a fresh face. So I was like, all right, let me call the Schmedster. And he was awesome. He's like, look, he's like, I don't have that lecture, but send me your slides. We have a lot of the same sponsors, and I'm there for you, buddy. And that's what Dentists in the Know is all about. It's a community of just freaking great people that will step in for each other, so that we don't have to cancel events or, let anybody down.
What's the lecture on, Jeff? What are you speaking about?
Timeshare.
I knew it. I knew it.
I know. So predictable,
There's
right?
a reason why he called Troy.
Yeah. No,
I knew it.
It's actually it's a one I haven't done in a while, a team building event called There's No Me in Team, just talking about how we can build up like first class teams and empowering the team members to not just be assistants, not just be hygienists, but to let them run with all the things that you're doing that excite you. So I'm kind of throwing some adjunctive procedures, kind of like what Doug is doing, getting involved in the oral systemic connection, or maybe it's sleep, or maybe it's TMJ, or maybe it's technology, but letting your team find those things that really excite them, and then giving them the latitude to really learn and run with it. So,
that's funny, dude. You could probably give that lecture in the Oklahoma locker room after the way they've played the past 2 weeks. So if you got a few spare minutes, just head down 35 South. It's about 20 minutes away. I'm sure Venables would let you in. They don't have a game this weekend. So, they're at Auburn, so they might not be there. But they need that lecture too.
Now, in all fairness, Tennessee's a great team this year. I get it that, it didn't look great for the first half, but they were kind of coming back in the second half, and they staged a little bit of a comeback presence.
I'm not going to say that I'm upset. My daughter, my money and my daughter go there, but my loyalty is in Austin.
To be though for Ava.
Yeah. By the way, if you have some spare time, call your niece and ask her if she wants to meet up for dinner. So,
I would love that. How far is Norman from Oklahoma City?
20 minutes.
Is that all? Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's just 20 minutes south. Norman's, really kind of a suburb of Oklahoma City.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Okay.
But you know what
I
they
don't
say.
Spend that much time in Oklahoma, Chad.
You know what they say?
Yeah, I do.
Shit flows south. So, hey, I'm going to admit, I know we've got banter going on, but I'm really, really captivated. Okay. I'm looking in this mirror and I'm talking with this is my left hand, but it looks like it's just kind of out of space, because it's backwards here. So I'm kind of fascinated by this. This is very interesting.
Now that you say that, it looks like it could be someone else's hand.
It really does.
This
one could do. Hello.
Do you ever see on what's that show? Whose Line Is It Anyway? Yeah. Where they do that kind of stuff anyway, and the guy will stick his hands through, and kind of an Austin Powers, Yeah,
it's very, very, very. That's a great show.
Did you do drugs before tonight?
I did not. I'm going to be honest with you, though. I am kind of exhausted, and I don't mean that negatively about the show, because this is always tops. But we are, and I shouldn't even say this in front of Jeff, but remodeling starts on Friday at our office.
Yeah. If you get started in
2026.
Yeah.
If
you get started and finished.
My business partner's out on a mission trip. I leave tomorrow afternoon. I've got so much to do at the office. I'm not going back up there tonight, but it's like every weekend that they're working, I'm gone. And so it's kind of driving me nuts. So,
and they're only working weekends.
Yes.
How did you arrange that?
Pretty elaborate schedule. It's pretty impressive the way they put it together. But we said to the guys when they wanted to when we talked about remodeling, we're like, do we need to shut down the office for a few weeks? What do we need to do? And I loved the answer. The guy says, it's going to cost you money to remodel, but it's going to cost you money if I shut you down. He goes, we're going to map everything out. And we're going to do it in phases. We're going to do everything Friday through Sunday. And I'm like, okay, so really this weekend is knocking out some cabinetry, putting new cabinetry in, putting floors in the ops. So we've already told our patients we're in the midst of a remodel, but when it's done, it's going to be fantastic. Right, Jeff?
Well, if they start complaining, just send them a picture of what my office looks like and tell them, the contractors are better in Texas.
So, hey, I got to tell y'all a story. I was in Atlanta doing a program. I was in Charlotte doing a program for Atlanta Dental last week. And this guy comes up to me and he says, hey, I was in an office in Murrells Inlet, South Carolina yesterday. I said, you were? And I said, I know somebody who practices there. He goes, I know you do. That's why I'm telling you that I was there. And I was like, oh, okay, well, tell me more. He goes, well, I feel real sorry for Dr. Horowitz. He says, there's a lot going on. And I said, well, what was Jeff doing? And he goes, I said, what was Jeff doing? He goes, he wasn't there. I said, oh, and he goes, And he's probably glad he wasn't there. He's like, because there's a lot going on in there. And
Yeah.
I said, it's going to be beautiful when it's finished. He goes, it's going to be absolutely amazing. He goes, but God, I feel for Dr. Horowitz. And I said, man, you're making me feel for him too. So,
well, JB and I were talking before the show. She's like, how is it? And I'm like, I don't know, to throw that much money at something and not feel amazing when you walk in there. I mean, I will eventually. It's just got a way to go. And unfortunately, I have nowhere to be but inside of there while they finish it up.
I know, man. I know. Well, I know it's going to be beautiful when
you know
when
what?
it's
Your
over.
presence is going to make it go faster. If you weren't there, they would be going even slower.
I don't know if I believe that, because one of my front desk people actually took a video of one of the electricians fishing at 10 in the morning in the pond outside. Went into his truck. Oh, I have the video. I'll send it to you right after this. Guy at 10 a.m. She videos it and sends it to me. And she's like, she was so bad for me. She's like, it's 10 a.m.
Right.
Yeah. Come on, the fish aren't even biting at 10 a.m.
Right. There's nothing biting at 10 a.m.
I mean, was he fishing top water or was he fishing with lures? I'm curious.
I don't know.
Inquiring minds want to know.
Again, I wasn't there. Apparently, I'm not that intimidating when I am there. And yeah. Anyway, JB, save this. I'm just starting to feel worse and worse about myself.
Yeah. Hey, let's go to the news. How does that sound?
Sounds great.
All right.
Oh no, hang on. Now I have to kill my virtual background.
And while we're waiting on JB, I'll just sit up here and do my little dance.
Yeah, I was trying to help our guest get his background uploaded, which maybe I ruined, but here we go anyway. Okay, so actually there's some interesting stories that are coming out this week that I think we should absolutely be watching. The first actually comes out of California. It's the first U.S. court that has put in the statement that fluoride in water may be risky and it must be addressed. This was a case that was being heard in the U.S. District Court for Northern District of California. The judge has deferred the decision actually back to the EPA to say that this warrants further investigation after hearing both sides of the story. And he's looking at the Toxic Substances Control Act and trying to make a determination. He did not feel it was within his jurisdiction to be able to do so, but he didn't rule against it either. And he said that there is a potential of an unreasonable risk of injury. And so he has sent it back to the EPA for further investigation. So that does mean that the EPA will now be picking up water fluoridation, which I think for most of our careers thus far, we've taken that particular community activity for granted. We've seen a few upticks of communities wanting to vote to pull it out of the water system for a variety of reasons. But now, because it's been in a U.S. district court, that will move it up the food chain in the federal system and certainly will activate federal regulatory agencies to take a peek at this as well, and to ultimately go back now and review guidelines, review the science and data to ultimately determine whether or not they're going to keep fluoridation in the water system. And if they do, is the 0.7 mgs per liter the really safe level, or should we be looking to lower that level down even further? I do think you could argue the fact that now being in fluoridated water systems for a very long time, multiple decades now, there is definitely a trickle-down effect of where you're getting access to fluoride through purchased water supplies that you're getting at the store, also your municipal water supply, and what's the compounding effect of all of those things. So, I'm sure the EPA is going to be looking at all of that and ultimately making a decision. But I think this is the first time it's actually moving out of these small municipalities that are having these discussions and now being revisited by the federal government. So we'll stay tuned to that. Another interesting story coming out of the legislature. is that there is a House bill that's just been introduced to expand access to care through the Medicare program. We've seen an uptick in activity and a strong push to want to get dental care benefits included in many of the Medicare programs that are out there. But this is probably got the most steam, and certainly because it's an election year, I think they're trying to put a lot of things before the House and Senate for votes, maybe before a changeover in November, or certainly will be a changeover in presidency since we don't have an incumbent running. And so I think to hedge those bets and knowing who's going to be currently in office for the next 8 weeks or so, actually less than that, 4 weeks now, to see if they can get a few things put before and get it moving before that change occurs. So we're seeing the Comprehensive Dental Care Reform Act of 2024, and that is an act to push more dental benefits in Medicare for those individuals that are over 65, lower income Americans, and veterans. If it's passed, it will become an essential health benefit under the Affordable Care Act, which means it will open up the door for more reimbursement for dental care services for those populations that were identified as in need of dental care. Now, there's a lot of back and forth about whether or not this is a good idea. Can we afford it or not? So I think we're going to see a lot of vetting of that particular program to decide if this is going to pass the muster of whether or not this is something that the government can actually afford to implement. But you're seeing a lot of momentum now wanting to look at including dental care benefit. This is one of like 5 or 6 bills now that have been introduced trying to get dental care benefits included in Medicare. So there seems to be a lot of momentum moving in this particular direction. So we will look at how both the Senate and the House are looking at the bills to determine what they will do next for dental benefit and what that will mean for us on the ground as we help support those patients. The last little bit of news for this evening, we always have to have a little bit of fun because I've been accused on occasion of having very sad news. And look, again, there were plenty of stories of a dental assistant who was running an illegal dental practice in a bedroom in her house. Another doctor is just suspended for infection control violations out of Washington State. And now they've had to issue, excuse me, I'm going to make sure that's correct. I might have misspoken. But that particular story, he's now, there's an alert out to all these patients for potential bloodborne pathogen spread. So there's all these fun stories that we could be highlighting, and yet we're not doing that. We're going to focus in on a little fluff on this Wednesday before a hurricane and lots of water on the East Coast. An interesting story came out highlighting where patients spend the most money on a routine visit at a dental office. Now, I was thinking we could have a little banter with the guys on this particular activity if they might want to rejoin me back onto the program. Maybe.
I'm quicker on the trigger than Chad is.
Why am I not surprised?
Yeah.
Okay, boys. First guess, and don't look it up. Where do you think the most expensive dental cleaning and exam, just a dental cleaning and exam and x-rays? Where is it coming out of? What state?
What state?
Yep.
Florida.
Okay.
I'm gonna say whatever state Nantucket is. Massachusetts. Yeah.
That's not a bad guess.
Okay. It's North Dakota.
What?
And here's the crazy thing about this study.
Bisons.
That was actually my 49th choice.
Yeah, I know. It was going to be my 50th. Here's the crazy thing. This whole study is the inverse of what you would think. The most expensive dental exams in the U.S. currently are coming out of North Dakota. They're coming out of Montana, Missouri, Oklahoma, and then, of course, Texas. And I'm sure actually most of that data came out of Chad's office. Because that shit.
I would say,
am I right?
In Missouri and Oklahoma, the problem is that they're charging more to clean gums because there's less teeth.
For sure.
Yeah.
I'm sorry for all those people in Oklahoma that Chad has just shunned completely. On the inverse side, the least expensive state to receive a dental cleaning and x-ray set is in New Hampshire. That's right, guys. It's the total inverse of what you would think, right? Cost of living traditionally on the East Coast is higher. The cost of everything on the East Coast and, far West Coast does tend to be higher than the middle states. And yet the middle states are getting the most bang for their buck when they walk into the operatory. In fact, I'm a little jealous reading this story. So New Hampshire is 24% below the U.S. average at $153, while North Dakota is raking in an average of $263 per dental cleaning and x-rays.
So
Absolutely
I would venture to
Right?
say that this is based upon the number of dentists per population.
I think you're right. I think there's definitely something to be said about that, but you could also argue that competition
Managed
has
care.
forced costs down.
Yeah,
I
I
would
think a lot of it has to
also-
do with the amount of managed care that's being
I would
offered.
also
Correct.
say that California, New Hampshire, New York, New Jersey would be lower on average because of the number of dentists and the amount of people who participate in insurance.
You think there's fewer people that participate in insurance in California, New York, New Jersey?
No. I'm saying that
Right.
because there's more people that participate in insurance, that the
In
costs
managed
are
plans,
lower.
right?
100%.
So
100%. And
that-
again, it goes
that-
back to the competition because
like I
the
would
more
say
insurance-
California is probably towards the bottom of the list, and you'd want to say that. I mean, you would want to say that Beverly Hills
Yeah.
would probably be the highest. And I'm not knocking any state. I mean, I did joke
No,
about the number
nobody's
of fees,
taking this
but
personally.
it all sucks. I mean,
Right.
we're in a very competitive environment, and insurance is screwing us all. Sorry, said it.
Well, on that positive note, a good
And
discussion
you know what,
though.
guys?
Like I never would have
That's the
guessed
news.
Montana. I mean, I never would have
wouldn't have
guessed
either.
North Dakota.
Or North Dakota. Come on.
Yeah, well,
Montana
I mean-
maybe because so many people from California have moved out there, but I really wasn't thinking North Dakota. Anyway,
I also read recently, I mean, I know this is way going down a rabbit hole, but I also read recently that Montana is one of the most expensive places to live. So I am going to borrow for a small fee Bobby Pappert's teepee that he spent decades building in Montana. And
You built a teepee? Really?
Bobby built a freaking teepee, dude.
yeah, he's got a TP out there.
Yeah. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to pull up a picture of Bobby's teepee for the show. That would make Bobby proud because he built that sumbitch with his bare hands.
Do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to bring our guest on, guys, because
You do that.
yeah,
You do
we've
that.
left Doug waiting down there longer than we should have, and Doug's he's a pretty important guy in my life, in my world, and for a lot of the people who've gotten to know him and have learned through the Wellness Dentistry Network, which he started back in 2016. But I'm not going to read his official bio just because he's a great guy. He's my friend, and I want to introduce him the way I want to introduce him. And I got to know Doug as a clinical instructor at the Coy Center. And he was really doing some groundbreaking stuff. He was talking a lot about periodontal pathogens and really was talking about salivary diagnostics before a lot of people out there even had it on their radar. Going back to like 2010, he was writing articles and discussing the role that salivary diagnostics could play, not just in treating periodontal conditions, but then in taking that forward and how it affects the rest of the body and the oral systemic connection, which then led him down this rabbit hole of starting something called the Wellness Dentistry Network, which has really now grown to a great group of collaborative dentists all working together to improve lives and improve overall health by first starting with the condition of the oral cavity and oral health. He's from Bloomfield Hills, Michigan. That's where he practices. And I can tell you for sure, this is a man who practices what he preaches. And I learn something new from him every time I sit down with him. And sometimes we even get a little buzz while we're doing that, but I still somehow manage to learn. So, Doug, what a pleasure it is to have you back again. And I want to lead into all this with a brief discussion that we had before the show, because apparently the story behind the genius has something to do with a sandwich. Uh-oh.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks a lot. Yeah, thanks, Jeff. I appreciate it. Thanks, Chad and Jenny. Yeah, it was really kind of crazy. I was going to University of Michigan and I commuted 50 miles. I was an older student. I started my career in Crown and Bridge. I was a lab tech. So I was a lab tech for 12 years. And then I went to dental. I got my prereqs at night and I went to I took a year off, got my prereqs, went to dental school at University of Michigan. And I had a house at the time and I was driving 50 miles each way. So I would tell I stand up in the back, I'm tired, or, if I'm, dressed like a Eskimo, it's, because I'm driving 50 miles, I don't want to end up on the side of the road. And so it was pretty funny because I would oftentimes eat in class, or I would just, I was putting 10 pounds in a 5-pound bag. So I'm in a microbiology class. I'm eating a sandwich, and my name's Thompson, so I'm sitting next to Tucker and between Tucker and Zettel, and way up in the back of the amphitheater. And pretty soon a flashlight comes in my eyes, and he says, "Thompson, are you eating a sandwich, or are you eating something in my class?" And he busted me eating a sandwich. And so he said, back in those days, it was disrespectful. So he said, "You need to come to my office." So I walk into his office. He's a microbiologist. I walk into his office and we spent 10 seconds talking about the sandwich. And I said, "What are all these bacteria posters on the wall?" And he had tremendous amount of bacteria posters on the wall. The guy I'm speaking of was Walter Loesch. And he was one of the guys who really studied metronidazole and how it affects microbial growth and microbial control. And so Walter and I became good friends. And so one of the things the tool that he used routinely in his work was a phase contrast microscope, looking at bacteria and wiggly bugs under the bacteria or under the microscope. And patients would equate a modal or a moving biofilm slide. They would see when that stuff's all dead and not moving anymore, that they would get healthier. And so when the Salivary Diagnostics came on the market in 2008, 2009. I went to Nashville, Tennessee, the home of Oral DNA, and spent time with those guys down there. And I said, "This is the phase contrast microscope of the next century, and I'm gonna use this, and I'm gonna see what happens." And so I stuck with it, and I've done over 3,500 Salivary Diagnostics cases, and it's really become very, very eye-opening about what's going on with the microbiome. And then, Jeff, as we started to study anti-aging medicine, it got tied to the medical world. I didn't realize that all these connections were amazing. And they didn't just say like people who had gum disease, they would say people who have a Fusobacterium nucleatum, or people who have Porphyromonas gingivalis, or they started naming these pathogens. And I said, when I'm just looking at a slide, I don't even know what the hell I'm looking at. I can see there's stuff in there, but I don't know what that is. So I started to use these things, and man, it's just gotten crazy. Now there's 11 companies. We're looking at viral panels now, and yeast panels, and bacteria panels for periodontal disease. I had a patient come in today that spent over $1,000 in testing, that was referred by a physician, that basically just says, I want to know what could be going on. And it's been unbelievably rewarding, and it's a fun way to practice. And I loved your comments earlier. You're talking about getting teams around these kinds of concepts. It really does. If you get involved in some wellness dentistry components, there's things your hygiene team can do amazingly. Chad, you talk about Norman, Oklahoma. We got 2 Coys grads down there, 2 gals that are practicing. They're going to have $2.5 million revenue this year from their hygiene department.
Really?
$2.5 million from their hygiene department. Started with 2 chairs, now have 6 hygiene chairs. Salivary Diagnostics. I mean, it's unbelievable. So, I mean, it's a great, great opportunity. And Jeff, I admired you and your work in sleep medicine. And, you helped. I started to realize, man, there's so many things we could talk to patients about. We have 23 modules in the library about how oral conditions can affect systemic health. And Jeff, you were a big impetus to that. And you were a kind of a big a colleague that I looked up to because I didn't know anything about sleep medicine back then. And I know just a little bit now, but you know a lot. And so I've always looked up to you for that and other things that you do.
That's really nice of you to say. I'm certainly humbled by that. But I think the bigger picture really comes in is that as you were tying this salivary diagnostics piece into what we were doing, you were also talking about the rest of the body, and you did a preceptorship with Bale and Deneen, which I went on to do. As soon as you started talking about that, I'm like, oh my God, what am I missing? And so it really made me think on a more holistic level, because we're really looking at inflammation from all of the many sources, whether it's pathogens from the mouth, whether it's poor sleep patterning, whether it's from the gut. There are just so many ways that we can have an impact. And really, it was you who kind of brought that together for me to say, okay, we all need to get out of our little bubbles to some degree.
Yeah, and I like the idea that, we're talking about different reimbursement patterns and medicine paying out certain things. It's really starting to come around, but we're still so far ahead of where mainstream, dentistry is. And so my vision is to really help teams of dentists and physicians, but mainly dentists, help dentists develop really strong teams where we can even just identify some of these things and then find the right collaborative help for them in their community or online. We have a host of of physician partners online that people can work with that can help these patients. And I think I talked, about this. The 2004, Time Magazine had a whole article, had a whole magazine dedicated to inflammation and cancer and heart attack and stroke risk, back in 2011 or back in 2004, 20 years ago. Then 2011, I go to an anti-aging conference, anti-aging medicine. And that whole symposia that year, or 2011, was about inflammation. So I'm sitting on an airplane on the way home, and I'm just thinking, I wonder what my hygienists could do if they knew the right words to say to somebody just to pique their interest, that, that we could help them with their obesity, or we could help them with their smoking, or we could help them with their sleep apnea, or we could help them with their insulin resistance or diabetes or pollutants in their home, or we could help them with all these issues that are inflammatory that have a cumulative effect, especially if they have some oral conditions to add to it. And what could we do for them? And man, that's when the floodgates opened, and patients would come in and say, I had a patient a couple of days ago who said, I went to a cardiologist, I went to a rheumatologist, I went to an endocrinologist, and I just couldn't play tennis. He was playing hours worth of tennis every day. He said, I was fatigued, I had brain fog, I didn't feel great. He had 4 infected lower incisor teeth that we removed, and he had been holding those for probably a year and a half. I told him many times. He finally got them out, and he said, I had no idea. If I would have had any knowledge that had that much impact on my systemic health, I would have done it, a long time ago. And so we got thousands of patients walking around like that.
I love what you're saying, because 2 points to that. One, I almost feel like there's this weird fundamental shift. You highlight the fact that medicine has become incredibly compartmentalized and specialized, almost to the point of their own demise, because they operate so much in their own silos now. They don't know, nobody's really doing the quarterback work, right? And maybe it's because dentistry is not totally subject to the whole pharmaceutical rage, and we can't just write you a prescription to get you out of our office and make it go away, right? We're tasked to start to find solutions. So it requires your brain to sort of engage and say, there has to be a root cause for what's going on here. And how did we get to this point? Which I feel my own personal soapbox is really missing in the world of medicine right now, is like digging into that root cause. And I'm wondering, to your point, Doug, are we moving into that world where now, because we understand an oral systemic connection, which is often early signs of other diseases that will present itself, are we becoming the medicine quarterback of patients where they can come to our practice and we can talk sleep, we can talk functional medicine, we can talk about holistic approaches and healthy anti-inflammatory lifestyles, and start to sort of feed them into the right directions? Oh, and by the way, prep a crown at the same time. But I mean, it's kind of an interesting concept. And you probably hear this more often than not. No one's really spent that much time with me talking about the things that you just talked to me about.
Yeah, you just really hit the nail on the head. And that's exactly what's happening. There's two things that's happening in medicine. One, concierge medicine. So you have to pay for it if you want good care. You got to pay your physician some kind of fee for access. And then number two, the compartmentalization that you talked about is huge. And it has really created a difficult continuous care pathway for the patient. They have to be their own advocate. And in our offices, our hygiene teams usually have an hour, 45 minutes. Our smallest appointment might be 30 minutes or a 15-minute check about something. And so it could be 10 minutes. But I mean, it's enough time for you to have access to the patient if you have the awareness that you really make a significant difference. And so yes, I have, in Detroit here, we make cars. It's one of our big industries. And I have people who are, number two for a major auto company as a patient. And they say to me, it blows my mind. I can afford an executive physical anywhere in the world. And how can I come in and have a more valuable health relationship with my dentist than I can with my physician?
Bingo.
And I can tell you I'm not a genius. It doesn't take that much. I mean, for you to learn a little bit about each one of these areas, it doesn't take that much. So that's what the WDN is. It's a network it's a hub of resources. So you can start to guide your teams to do that. And you know what, guys? I don't want all the dentists don't have to do this. Empower your teams. Jeff talked about letting your teams find something they're passionate about. I mean, it's crazy how rewarding it is to have somebody from my hygiene or assisting team go and do a caries consultation or go and do a consultation on periodontal disease because they're passionate, they're informed, and they know. And you know how compelling that is when you see it in front of you and you understand it and you believe it and you know it. It's the patients, they just want more of what you have to offer. And it's really, really puts a lot of joy in practice. And in the two practitioners in Norman, they have gotten influential and they've been significant in developing part of a Salivary Diagnostics panel for another new emerging company. And so it's really it's such a great way to practice. However, I also don't see mainstream corporate DSO practices. I think it's going to be hard for them. They're in the model. Interesting story. One of the DSO guys said to me, wanted me to do a perio program for his DSO. And he said, here's the problem with our hygiene departments. The dentists know how much insurance money is on the table for the people who come to the DSOs and run, and have that insurance plan. So early in the year, between January and March, or the dentists strip the money off doing restorative dentistry, and there's nothing left for perio. And so he said that, so unless patients are paying for it out of pocket, they're not doing that. And a lot of people who are going into that group are people who want to wind down their career. They want to ride off into the horizon, and all they want to do is pad the bottom line for them. And so there's a lot of there's more perio going on that are coming from practices in my community. My probably third biggest referral source are people who are dissatisfied with corporate dentistry and what they're doing in the community, and they're coming to private service practitioners looking for a way out of that mess. Now, I don't mean any disrespect to what's going on in corporate dentistry, because they need what we have. They totally need that, and we have to figure out how to get that to them, because there's a ton of people who would be well served. So whether we can do it through medical insurance, through some other way, I'm working with some of the medical insurance people right now that are in the autumn of their careers, and they're much more willing to give back and try to research what's happening here. But we got to figure that out. We have to figure that out, because there's a lot of people out there that need a lot of help, and we could be huge in that.
Yeah.
Doug, I'm kind of quiet here, but I'm taking in everything that you've said. It's really fascinating, and it's really a breath of fresh air too when we hear somebody that's so passionate about what's going on, and not just somebody's mouth, but what the mouth is telling us about the body, and so on and so forth. So for those of us out there that maybe aren't running that insurance driven practice, or maybe we are, what does a day in your practice look like? I mean, what does that new patient exam look like, and where does all this fit in? I know that's kind of that could be a long answer, but sum it all up for us, and in maybe some short bites that people could take home and start using in their practice, or would encourage them to start looking into what you have to offer to help them build their practice.
Yeah. One thing that I think all of us have to do, if you want to create distinction for yourself in your practice, is you're going to have to create some value for the appointment. It can't just be a routine. So this isn't going to be for everybody. This is going to be for people who truly want to build sincere relationships with patients, built around trust and built around giving some value for what you do. So one of the things that we had to do during COVID was we couldn't meet people unless we were all garbed up. So I started doing virtual exams for patients, 10 minutes, 15-minute meet and greet, where I could sit in front of a camera like this. I could see your face. You could see my face. We could say hello. I can't tell you how many times during those virtual exams I found out that they were coming in for something different than what I thought. They didn't know what to expect at the first appointment. I don't like my hygienist to have to wrangle with a patient about taking radiographs or not taking radiographs at the new patient visit, because either it wasn't discussed or somebody didn't have a system in place. So number one, greeting the patient, however you do that, it's nice to know something about them before you meet them. I spend 15 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes on a Zoom call with every single new patient to let them know what they can expect in practice, because they're also disappointed if they come from another practice, they've been on 2 cleanings a year, they have stage 3 perio, and you're not going to clean their teeth that day. You want to collect diagnostic data because you want to offer them treatment, right? They could be disappointed. So I make sure that's worked out and that they understand what they're coming for. Then when they come in, that first appointment is so peaceful. And I don't care, Chad, if they come in through hygiene first, see me later. I don't care if they see me first, go to hygiene later. Either way we do it, they know that if they have bleeding gums, they're going to be offered some kind of opportunity to make those bleeding gums go away. It's not their fault. As a matter of fact, we've had a teaching inability. You know what it was in my practice before I learned some of this stuff? My 2 tools for cleaning the mouth was brush and floss, and a tube of toothpaste. 99% of my patient care were Profis. That's what it was. And the reason why the practice I bought, who had a hygienist that went to University of Michigan, she knew what to do. The reason why we had no probes in the exam kit, why we had no full mouth series of radiographs, why we had very limited records. I had 10 years of clinical data on a 3x5 index card, a very remote practice in 96. I said, why haven't we been doing comprehensive exams on patients and full mouth series? And she said, because he didn't care about it. And you know what? So if you're a practitioner and you don't lead this, or you don't have some care, then some care for this issue, then it's going to be a problem in your practice. So if you lead it and let your hygiene go, it can be amazing. So my day's a lot like yours. I'll have crown and bridge. I don't matrix it so strict unless I'm seeing long patients. So I have my days where I do 9 units or 14 units, but those are rarer. And so
wait a second. You mean you don't do those every single day?
Heck no. Are you kidding me? And you celebrate. I remember one time
in the lecture I went to last week, they said that's all they do.
Yeah, well, that's good for them. I said, yeah. You should go to their office and visit them and see if that's really what they do.
Yeah, I know, right?
Because I was impressed by the day where it was 10 seat in the morning and prep 10 in the afternoon. Well, that's not happening in my practice. So I remember one day I said something to John Coy's about having a great day because I had like 5 crown preps in a day. And he said, on 5 different patients? And I said, yeah, 5. He goes, that would kill me. So, I mean, I get the quadrant dentistry thing, but come on. I mean, I have a normal restorative practice, but we give an hour to an hour and 15 minutes, sometimes an hour and a half if they're coming from a physician. And I'll tell you that relationship with one physician in your community that trusts you and they understand Jeff talked about heart attack and stroke risk, the Bale-Donin kind of principles, and there's more and more of them today. They're around in almost every community. When they send you a patient because that patient has elevated cardiovascular biomarkers and they can't figure out why, if that patient has any restorative work, you're doing a CBCT with interpretation, read by an oral maxillofacial radiologist. You're doing salivary diagnostics. You're doing a full comprehensive perioval, and you're giving them some kind of assessment when they walk out of the office about what your findings are. And these patients don't come in and say, I don't know if I want that. They come in and say, my doc told me to come here because you can help me. Let me know when it's time for me to go home. And it's really, really rewarding. So my days, like a lot of your days, when the new patients come in, we spend probably an hour to an hour and 15. Some of them want services that day, hygiene services, and they get that. That's fine. And some of them don't. Some of them just want to come in for an evaluation. Some of them already have good dentists of record. This is another thing why we created the Wellness Dentistry Network. I don't want to steal business, Chad, from my colleague across the hallway who doesn't know this. I want to nurture them and help them learn how to do what we need to do so that we can benefit the patient. I have a ton of snowbird patients. I'm sure all of us do. Mm-hmm. They go to Arizona, they go to Florida. We're in the Northeast, so they get the heck out of here. Usually, they come back for the summertime, and I tell them something that is very non-entrepreneurial. I would say, Betty, wherever you are in the world, I don't care where you are, you need to see a dentist probably 4 times a year, and I'll find somebody in the community where you're going that can help you. Stay well. You don't have to it doesn't have to be me, but it needs to be somebody in our network or somebody who gets the language. Mm-hmm. And then I try to, they go, oh, I got this really nice guy. I'll call him and ask him, hey, are you interested in learning what the periodontal maintenance procedures that we do on this patient? You could take care of Betty. You have a hygienist who's competent. They just have to know what to do. And it's not that hard.
Don't you find too that patients, especially those who have uncontrolled or difficult to control perio and caries, and in particular caries, because I think perio patients who get it seem to understand, like there's not enough brushing and flossing in their own home that they can do that's going to manage that there's this bigger component. But the caries, maybe because of marketing for the last 3 decades, 4 decades of if you just brush and floss and you won't have decay and all that, they come in with a lot of shame. They come in with a lot of guilt or a lot of confusion. Like, I don't understand. I do all the things that I've been told to do. And yet here I am. And you tell me I have 4 more cavities and how do we move forward? Don't you feel patients gravitate towards the information that you're helping them? Like at the end of the day, it seems counterintuitive, but your goal is to keep them out of your restorative chair. You aren't cutting on.
Yeah, there's no question. And Jen, let's get some real compassion for these children that don't have a voice. Yeah. And these children come in and they have, I have a 9-year-old with caries on every deciduous tooth and on the first molars already, on the mesials of the first molars. And and it's sad, but it's not their fault. Caries and periodontal disease are biofilm mediated diseases. So why don't we learn how to manage the biofilm? And, has anybody ever thought about treating a strep mutans infection with an amoxicillin rinse and nystatin because there's yeast involved in early childhood caries as well? I mean, we have great opportunities to treat these people different, but we have to control the biofilm. I've worked with Quenny Feng at Phytolab in Seattle. She has a beautiful comprehensive caries panel. It has 12 pathogens on it. And I think we're going to get to a day where we show biofilm activity, caries biofilm activity, because we've been doing this in perio now for 14 years, 15 years. You'll show biofilm activity, you'll show a reduction in biofilm activity, and you'll show a cessation in new lesions. Now, we still got to fix all the old ones and do all that stuff. But please, for all of us to help understand this disease, go to the Carie Free Company and call them up and say, send me some books titled Why Me or Balance, those 2 books, and it will help your patients. Every single patient that has a child with my patients that have a child or they have cavities, they get a Balance book and they get a Why Me book. And so you read about this for a couple of days. Let's come back and have a consultation outside of the hygiene room for a fee. And we're going to teach you about this disease, because it's going to cost a fortune for you in the future if you don't get the biofilm under control that's causing that problem.
Well, and I love the empowerment because, I opened my news segment with this fluoridation debating whether we put it in the water or not. And we can definitely get in the weeds on that. But at the end of the day, that's a global reaction to an individualized disease, right? Every patient doesn't present with the same risk profile, yet we're treating every person in the community as if they all have the same risk profile. So I love scaling it down to the individual biofilm and then customizing a program specific for them. And then we don't have to debate fluoridation because we don't need to globally treat, because we can individually identify and treat what needs to happen. We don't just put insulin in the water in case somebody accidentally has diabetes.
We talked about putting statins in the water. Yeah.
Right.
It's crazy. Yeah. I do think that that's the bitch, is that you have to drink it. Right. And so, but if you look at any one of those movies, those hour-long videos about the fluoridation conspiracy and big pharma and the whole, this whole picture, every single one of those experts will say the only legitimate use of fluoride is topically applied to the teeth as an anti-cavity management strategy. And so, do I agree that young moms and developing children should be drinking water with large amounts of fluoride? I don't think they should, but I think they need to have something. They need to have some methodology of caries management, and so it can't be neglected. But topically applied fluoride is safe and effective, and so is now nanohydroxyapatite, right. And we have other things that we're learning more and more about. But if they take fluoride out of the water, the reason why they did it is because there's no access to care, right? Mm-hmm. And the people in these, that original study, I'm from Tillsonburg, Ontario. That original study was done in Brantford, Ontario, Grand Rapids, Michigan. And the decayed, filled, and missing surfaces went way down when they put fluoride in the water. And it was just a way to globally disperse it. Yeah. So I get the beef. I understand it. And now I have a tremendous amount of patients who are filtering their water. They're doing something with it at home, or they're drinking bottled water with no fluoride in it. And they are running into problems. And so we have to educate them, and then we have to put protective measures on where it's warranted.
Right.
One of the mantras of our practice is we're going to provide you everything you need and nothing you don't. I mean, I'm not doing too much on people that don't need it, but man, many people need way more than they're getting.
Yep.
So one of the things that's come from this, first of all, JB, I think you have really touched on an overarching theme that I think could be dedicated to within a whole other show, which is, kind of this, one size fits all approach to disease. We need to forget about that. And I think that's just such a great topic for an entire show, is how we can individualize treatment better. But Doug, what I want to ask you, because we're getting towards the end of the show, is, so you're passionate about all this stuff. And let's say somebody that's listening right now says, you know what, I've been kind of going down the wrong path. I don't love the way my practice is going. I kind of bought into this practice like you did. Here's how they did it. I kind of fell into a lot of those habits because, that's what the team was used to. and that's what the culture dictated. And so I'm seeing this all the time, almost this anti-corporate, how do I compete with these guys and maintain my independent practice? And clearly offering these kinds of services is a way to do that. So in your opinion, how does one go from a more traditional practice, maybe that's not looking at all of these things, how does one begin the journey of transforming a practice into something like what you have built, where you're spending so much time working with physician referrals, versus trying to convince your own patients that they should go a certain way?
Yeah, you use two key words, journey and transformation. And it starts with awareness. So somehow you have to get an awareness of what the vision of what your practice is going to be. And if you can't create that vision yourself, come and talk to somebody like me or you guys who have done this kind of thing and start to understand what could it look like. And once they start to understand the vision of what it could look like, what could that be? I mean, my practice is called Integrative Oral Medicine. That's my dental practice. It's not Doug Thompson Smiles. It's Integrative Oral Medicine. And I rebranded it because it was impossible, once you start to learn this, to disconnect the mouth from the rest of the body. So there has to be an awareness. We have 2-day hygiene courses at the center. We have the Koi Center. We have a 4-day wellness course that encompasses the entire, anything you'd want to do in your practice is in our 4-day wellness course at the center. And there's the American Academy of Oral Systemic Health. I'm not the only person out teaching this. There's other people as well. I will tell you, we have a damn good program, and it's really well put together. And because it's not just my work, it's a collective work of other people who have helped me grow. I just happen to be the person who organized the book and put it together. And if you start to create awareness, then you start to think, what capability does my team have, and what's the best fit for me right now? And I got to tell you, it's got to be perio. You start there, and then you do, because that's led by your hygiene team, and then you empower your hygienist, and you just start there. And then we start providing other information for how does perio affect rheumatic arthritis? How does perio affect cardiovascular disease? How do pollutants affect perio response? How does all this work together? And you learn that slowly over a period of time, and you get confidence, and your practice starts to transform. The other thing I want to say that's very important, Jeff, is you have to create a visual culture in your practice, which means there needs to be pieces of stuff on the wall, not your diploma. It needs to be stuff on the wall about health and wellness opportunities, or we have a whole placard campaign called Health Measurables That Matter, 23 of them. We rotate them at the front desk every month so that patients understand why do I need to know about pollutants? How does that affect my overall health? That's the placards and the things that they see in the practice. It invites a question. It invites a simple question, raises curiosity, and patients go, this guy's about way more than just drilling on my tooth. And that's how it starts, and it just grows.
That's where, besides, so education, obviously the first step, getting involved with the Wellness Dentistry Network. And I think you've been very humble about all of the, not just the services, but the pieces that you already have pre-done, pre-printed, articles, information that a dentist can kind of cut and paste their own information. They can put their own logo, they can put their own name on it. Correct. And yet there's a lot of great information that they can just be handing to their patients and get them to begin thinking that way. So maybe, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
I'll only talk briefly about it, Jeff, and it goes back to what you said in the beginning as you were talking about empowering teams. If a dentist wants to do this in their practice, what I would do is I would pull my hygiene team together, or my assisting staff, or my front desk staff. I would first off give them an opportunity to share in some of the upcoming benefits to the practice in some way. They're going to really enjoy their day. But if somebody buys the subscription, which is under it's $2,700 and it's a $1,500 a year continuing commitment on for the future. It's so easy. I mean, if you don't get that back 100 times over, it would be a big mistake. But the problem is too many dentists think they want to do that. They sign. It's just like a book. How many books do you have sitting around that you bought that you thought you were going to read and you never opened the cover? And we all do that. And so it's a common thing. So what we need to do is make a.
By the way, that was unreasonable hospitality you just picked up, wasn't it?
I know. You were yeah. I have the team meeting on teamwork tomorrow for a half a day.
I just finished it. It was awesome.
Yeah, I have a whole meeting tomorrow based on that kind of concept. So the idea is let your team run with it. Let them hand out the materials. Let them print the materials. Give them the okay. Have them agree to the vision. We have a vision exercise that's very easy. It's like 6 simple things. And if the practice says, yes, I'd like to be about that, we have the pathway for them to do that. But it's not without work, and you have to cut yourself some slack because it takes time. It doesn't happen from a weekend course. That's not how it works. A weekend course creates awareness. A little bit of work and dedication does the rest. And when I get emails from people like Jen and Sarah that tell me their practice is now producing 2.5 million, I get
in Norman, Oklahoma.
I get correct. Yeah, well, I think somebody said something.
That's not the practice. That's the hygiene department.
That's the hygiene department. Oh
right.
Yeah, I mean it's crazy. And you know what? And you know how humble they are. You know what they said? They said the thing that they regret the most is they weren't doing it earlier. That they wish they would have started earlier. They let too many people go. I let 99 patients walk out the door with just a trophy. The prevalence data is like 65% of people need some kind of service. So what a disconnect in our profession. And it's because it's because we're into thinking about just restorative services, the only thing that makes money. I can tell you what builds great value in your practice. Do something for your patients that they really appreciate that prevents them from getting drilled on in your practice. They'll eat out of your hand. And that's a great thing to be able to do.
What a perfect note to end on. And Doug, we could have talked to you probably for 2 hours more, probably never would have run out of anything to discuss. But unfortunately, we're out of time. I want to say thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, Jeff.
It's always just such a pleasure to chat with you, buddy.
I'll chat anytime. We got so many fun things to talk about.
Thank you so much. And if you would, Chad, would you be good enough to close us out tonight?
Yeah, there's so many things that Doug said tonight that just resonate on so many different levels. It's really like I said, it's a breath of fresh air. I don't mean to repeat that, but it really is when you hear somebody that has a similar philosophy to you. Now, Doug's way more advanced than I am at this point in time, but there are so many things that he said. And I think one of the best compliments that we can receive from our patients is, you really made an impact on my life. You changed my life. You changed my health. And for a number of reasons, we hear that from different people at different times, different days. I think Doug probably hears it more than us, but I think it's pretty wonderful when people say that. But I think the moral of the story is that, there's a lot more to dentistry than drill them, fill them, and bill them. And I think that Doug really honed in on that. So thank you for that. And if you're having trouble in your practice, it may be kind of leadership down. I mean, I think you need to look at what you offer, what you do. And if we take care of the whole patient, the money's going to come. I mean, we're going to be profitable in a number of ways. So Doug, thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
With that being said, I do have one more thing that I need to share with you. And it would be 2 numbers. The first one would be 31. The second one would be 12. And does that ring a bell to you there? Because I think a couple of weeks ago there was a little there's a little tussle in Ann Arbor. So I had to share that with you, buddy.
I'm not sure I'm coming back. I can't
Sorry,
take
man.
abuse.
It was too close.
That was the end of the Doug show.
No more
I had to
kumbaya
Nice
here.
knowing you.
I had to do it.
No,
I had
it's
to
all
do
good.
it.
I love all college sports, and you know, I know you closed the show, but I actually had the 1998 Rose Bowl picture up in an operatory, and I would put all my Michigan State fans with a toothache in that room so they could look at that thing.
Good. Hey, things
I
will
love all
change
those
throughout the
universities.
season.
Don't even have to say I told you so, did you?
Yeah.
So I get
All
it.
right,
Thanks for the
everybody.
humble.
Well,
I
hey.
appreciate it.
Hey, let's have everybody have a great night and maybe have a new outlook on your practice tomorrow. So
Thank
good night,
you.
everybody.
See you guys.
Good night.
Good
Thank
night.
you.